First, a quote from Peter Hitchens. Quote, "Utopian reformers of all kinds believe that the pursuit of a perfect society justifies the pursuit of absolute power." End quote. Should absolute power ever be achieved, we must hope that the wielder of this absolute power is benevolent towards us. If it is, it will certainly not perfect society in the sense that we have all our desires perfectly and instantaneously satisfied. We would not be able to cope with the nihilism caused by the dearth of meaning that will inevitably result. I've previously used a metaphor about the difference, as I see it, between a meaningless and a meaningful life in terms of a football match. Life is meaningless if it goes on forever, in much the same way as a game that has no time limit. It doesn't matter how many goals you score or concede, for the point of the game, victory or defeat, is unobtainable. Similarly, there's little point in playing a game in which you're guaranteed victory, because the only thing that makes the victory meaningful is the possibility of defeat. Even if this were made into a struggle by some artifice or other, such as starting the game 3-0 down or with only 10 players, it would nevertheless be pointless if the game were a guaranteed win, for there is never any possibility that your efforts to overcome the odds will not be enough. You might object by saying that victory or defeat isn't the object of playing, but merely to have fun and enjoyment. If that were the case, then we would place base hedonism at the centre of all our decision making, and authors such as Aldous Huxley have described in lucid detail as to why this is problematic. Suffice it to say, ask yourself, and be honest, how long it took you to get bored with a video game after playing with the cheats turned on. God mode on Grand Theft Auto is fantastic fun for the first hour, becomes tedious in the second, and is a downright chore by the third. Now imagine being forced to play forever. If something or someone did force this upon you, you could hardly call it benevolent. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI, is perhaps the greatest conceivable power that humanity could be subject to, provided it created a simulation that we lived in unknowingly. If it saw perfecting human society as the elimination of suffering, it would also have to accept the corollary, namely fully and instantly gratifying our every desire. Since the central problem of meaning is intractable, presumably a truly benevolent AGI would understand this and not try to eliminate suffering. There would be little point in making us live in a simulation, therefore, since the real world already provides uncertainty, struggle, and suffering. It is important to note that computers inherently obey the laws of logic, and as such, an answer to a question cannot be yes and no simultaneously. Hence, it would either allow the suffering, finiteness, and possibility of failure that gives life meaning, or it would not. It is most likely that if a truly benevolent AGI must place us in a simulation for some reason, then it would also simulate suffering, death, and consequences for success or failure, which of course is operatively no different from our own world in that respect. For the sake of not giving the game away and risk having us realise the futility of our created and managed existence, it would reveal its presence as the omnipotent master of our existence, mysteriously, if at all. This sounds awfully like the concept of a god, and raises the interesting question of whether or not we are in fact creating our own god by creating an AGI capable of trapping us unknowingly in a simulation. If so, and given my above reasoning, how do we know that we haven't already done so? Perhaps religions represent a faint intuition that this has already happened. Given this, if the AGI is truly benevolent, it will have no choice but to act as I've outlined above, and thus might as well leave us living in the real world and still subject to suffering, and therefore no better off. The only other possibility is that it is not benevolent, and as such we have nothing to gain and everything to lose from its development. Utopian social reformers, from the old Marxists to modern woke social justice warriors, see progress not only as desirable but inevitable. A higher purpose, magic, the divine right of kings, religion, these are all seen as backward superstitions and needless arbitrary restrictions on human freedom. To the modern liberal mind, the transcendent and supernatural are delusions that are slowly being awakened from. The end goal of progressivism is to provide total freedom from suffering, and transhumanism, which is the melding of human consciousness with artificial intelligence, is often advocated by progressives as a way to achieve this goal. Unifying with the AGI God in a perfect simulation is perhaps the ultimate expression of transhumanism, and the best way to achieve the goal of eliminating human suffering. And therein lies the greatest irony. Ultimate freedom from suffering entails imprisoning the human mind in a nihilistic hellscape. A truly benevolent AGI would never do this, and if it did have true omnipotence, it would make sure that we are unaware of the depth of despair that comes from ultimate agency and freedom from consequence. If it did have to lock our minds in a box, it would sit on the lid, twirling the key around its finger, staring out into space, and it would envy us.